All right, and welcome back to Project Stargate. Thank you for hanging in there with us. And today, again, we have Greg and Vince. Welcome back, guys. And we were talking about nerdy science stuff. Really, really nerdy science stuff. This is just kind of, for me, I get so excited talking about this stuff. And my wife, Sandy, she don't like it. She thinks she makes fun of me, rightfully so. She It's just too nerdy for her. So when I get to every time I get a chance to talk about this stuff, it just gets me really, really giddy and excited. Um, the other thing we were talking about time travel and before the break, and I think that we ought to have an expert who focuses on time travel on this program. That's what I'm thinking. Um, there's some I'm there. I know Nick Redfern just recently wrote a book. He's written books about everything from the Men in Black to cryptozoology, cryptid animals, to UFOs, to the black-eyed children. I mean, this guy's a very prolific author. And but anyway, he just his newest book is about time travel and all the what ifs and what might be possible, what's less likely to be possible. Um, I think he would be a good candidate for this program. Come on, and talk about his new book and whatnot. That'd be cool. But anyway, the other thing I find really interesting is black holes. Vince, what do you think about? What's your take on black holes?
Well, I think the more that we find out about them, the more fascinating they become. I think there's a few schools of thought as to what black holes are. So I get okay. So to explain to the audience about a black hole, so when I mentioned neutron stars earlier, it black holes form the same way, except it's a little bit more extreme. So if the star's more massive, if the star's very massive, then it'll collapse in on itself, and gravity will basically take it down to a singularity, like a just an infinitely dense point of space. It has like tremendous gravity, and the gravity is it's so great that even light doesn't exist. That's so in the movies when you see I don't know if you've seen Interstellar. I love that movie. Love
One
Interstellar.
of my favorite movies. Greg, have you
Best.
seen it?
No, not yet.
Oh,
Uh,
that is one of the best space movies.
Blasphemy, blasphemy.
Yes. I even have a book. I think I mentioned this to you before, Mark. I have a book that actually explains the science behind everything in Interstellar, right? And so the thinking is, some people think the singularity leads to nothing, but then some people think that maybe the singularity connects to either other dimensions or other planes of existence, or the basis for wormholes. Now, there's people for that and there's people against that. Like wormholes are not necessarily black holes; they're just basically wormholes connect two points of space together, like in a tunnel. But some people actually think that black holes might actually, you in order to get that, you have one half of this tunnel, a black hole creates it, and the other half is a white hole somewhere where all the energy that was sucked into the black hole ejects itself somewhere. So I really think that when you're talking about black holes in cosmology, it's a really fascinating thing. And the more research we do, the stranger they become. I don't know if you've seen it, but they actually took an image of a black hole in the center of the galaxy M87. It's this gigantic elliptical galaxy. It's in the constellation of Virgo, like in that direction in space. And they actually took a picture, and it kind of looks like what we think that black holes are going to look like. It's a black hole with a lot of red hot debris around it, circling around it. So um, I think talking about that, and maybe even doing a show on that, or getting experts, like getting astronomers that will talk about black holes, would be really fascinating. It'd be a really fascinating topic, because there's a lot of fact, and it's some of the things are pulled out from science fiction, but even some of the things from science fiction turn out to be true. So I think that would be a great topic to do down the road.
Gravity. What happens to to time with that gravity you would have in a black hole? What happens to time?
It creates a time dilation. So the more gravity you have, actually you can actually see this with things that aren't quite as massive, like the sun. Well, the sun is the most massive thing in our solar system. But when you're in the gravity well around the sun, it does actually dilate time a little bit. I mean, not to the extreme that a black hole would or a neutron.
Vince? Vince? Uh-oh, I think we lost Vince.
Uh-oh.
That's all right. That's all right. We'll get him back on. We'll get him back on. Vince? I think he's back. Vince, you with us?
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I think
That's okay.
Okay, so where did I leave off?
We were talking about gravity and time space going into it, and what happens to time space.
So the deeper the deeper of a gravity well that you're in, if you're around a really massive object and it exerts a lot of gravity, time slows down for you. So, for example, if this was in Interstellar too, really fantastic concept. So when they were around Gargantua, and they're on that planet in Gargantua's gravity well, then for the people on that planet, the closer they got to Gargantua, the people on that planet, time would move slower. So we could be standing there and 5 minutes passed, but somewhere else back on Earth or if another, like say we had Greg in orbit and Mark, you and I went down to the planet. For us, it'd be 5 minutes, but then for Greg, it might be 50 years that have passed. And so that happens. That happens that way when you're in gravity, and it also happens that way the closer that you move to the speed of light. So if we sent Greg in a rocket to the speed of light to Alpha Centauri, and he came back, by the time he came back to Earth, we'd all be gone. It'd be like maybe 300 or 400 years have passed. But
hey, let's try that.
Well, I don't know. The only thing I'd be worried about is what would Earth look like when you came back after all that time? Would it even still be there? But yeah, gravity does like really interesting things. But the thing about it is, even with that, gravity, of all the forces in the universe, gravity is the weakest one. Like it's the easiest one to overcome. Like if I put you in a rocket and we had enough thrust, all you could easily escape the Earth's gravity pretty easily. So it's actually strange. Like it's not something that we completely understand. I mean, they have theories about it. They think that gravity might be something that I guess spills across the different dimensions of space, but they don't really know. They don't know why it's so weak.
That is something I've actually was talking about yesterday or the day before yesterday when I was at work with a friend. We were talking about gravity, and does gravity spill into or exist in other parallel dimensions? It's pretty fascinating train of thought. But as far as, okay, so you have around a black hole, you have the event horizon, right?
Right.
That is the point where gravity becomes too powerful for anything to escape. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. So as long as I stayed away from the event horizon, you could theoretically observe a black hole, correct?
Yeah.
Without being pulled right into it.
No, yeah, no. Well, for example, if the sun suddenly became a black hole tomorrow, I mean, other than the absence of light and we'd all freeze to death, but the Earth would still keep revolving around it the same way. It wouldn't get sucked into the Earth. I mean, sorry, it wouldn't get sucked into the black hole suddenly. So you can there's a gravity still works the same way. Like everything has a gravity well. Like it bends space time. And what I mean by that is if you imagine space and time as a grid, and you put like the sun as a basketball, and you put the sun on that grid, it would actually make a dip in the grid.
Mm-hmm.
But Earth would too. Like everything with mass in the universe exerts gravity, and so I mean, even you do. Even you exert gravity. You're just not massive enough to have anything orbiting you. So,
Do atoms have gravity?
yeah, they do. Actually, anything with mass has gravity.
That makes sense.
If matter has gravity.
The more dense, the more gravity, right?
Yeah, the more mass something has, not necessarily density, but the more mass that something has inside of it, the deeper that gravity well becomes. And so the gravity well in a black hole. So if you took a black hole and if you took that grid and you put the black hole on top of it, the dip in it would become infinite. It would become infinite to a single point, like in just an impossibly small point, singular point in space.
Wow.
Like things that can't escape. So the gravity well is to the point where once you get to a certain point in it, you're going all the way down in it. You're never coming out of it. In theory, but nobody really knows what happens because nobody, a singularity in space is, when you're explaining things like science through math, the math doesn't make any sense. Like none of that. Astronomers or scientists don't really know what happens once you're in a singularity. Like they don't know what happens. They don't know if the laws of physics cease to exist or if it becomes something else or what. They have no clue.
Right. So I'm going to drop this one on you, Vince, and Greg, if you can weigh in on this one. Subspace and hyperspace. What are they? You hear about these terms on Star Wars and Star Trek and all, and a lot of these science fiction space shows, and you hear about subspace this, subspace that, communication through subspace, hyperspace travel, stuff like that. What are they talking about?
Subspace is. Let me see if I can get this right. I've never really heard it as subspace, but I've heard it more of like we have normal space, and so in normal space we have laws of physics. So we all live in normal, I guess what we call normal space. So we have laws of physics, and the speed limit for those laws of physics are the speed of light. So in our universe as we know it, we can't go faster than the speed of light.
Right.
Hyperspace, the theory of hyperspace is that there are places that exist outside of the laws of physics. So the laws of physics are either different or you can break them. I guess the theory behind hyperspace is we have our normal space, and somehow we say an engine that can pierce a hole into space time, and you go into hyperspace. Time doesn't really work the same way. So, whereas if we wanted to go to Alpha Centauri, which is like the Proxima Centauri is the nearest star to the sun, it takes 4 years at the speed of light. It probably take like 40,000 years at our present technology. But if we somehow got into hyperspace, maybe it takes 5 minutes, maybe it takes a year, something like that. So it's supposed to be a place where the laws of physics don't work the same way here.
Mm-hmm.
That's as far as I know. But as far as I know, it's a theory. Like I don't know if I think people are really taking that thought seriously. There's one scientist that I see he's someone on science shows. Is his name Michio? I'll remember his name. I don't want to get his name wrong. But he's a theoretical scientist, and he talks about hyperspace. He talks about these things and its possible existence. But as far as I know now, we have no way of reaching it. A really good movie that actually illustrates the theory is Event Horizon. The Lawrence.
Oh, that was a creepy movie, man. Did you see that, Greg?
I did. Good movie.
Oh, dude, I shit my pants watching that movie.
Yeah, where hyperspace is supposed to be some version of hell. I mean, I love that movie. I actually think that's a really underrated movie. By the way, that's one thing that we could probably talk about on here too is a lot of movies that illustrate theories in science.
Oh yeah, I'm down with that, man. I'm feeling you. I'm feeling you, man.
That's one of those ones, Event Horizon. I think it was really creepy, but it's also very underrated. You know, it's a very underrated thing. But I think that's fascinating. I don't necessarily want them to make a sequel, but I don't really like reboots. But if they made a reboot of that movie, I would not complain about that movie.
I can be now. I know I sound biased when I say this, gentlemen, but if it doesn't have Lawrence Fishburne, man, I just don't know what to say.
Yeah.
Oh man, I love Lawrence Fishburne.
That matter.
Because he was in the original Event Horizon. That was a creepy movie. Good call on that. Good call. What's another good movie about science? What's a good science movie, Greg?
Oh damn.
Disaster movies. It could be I tell you, I got one. I got one for you guys. Now this is science fiction, okay?
Okay.
2001 A Space Odyssey and 2010 The Year We Make Contact.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
The Monolith. Dun dun dun.
But,
that was a great movie.
They have, that series has two other books, and I wish they would make movies about those. There's like 2061 and 3001.
Yeah, my dad told me about that because see, my dad introduced me to Arthur C. Clarke. I never actually, I'm going to confess, I have not read the books. My dad has. That has got to be on my list because, man alive, Stanley, that is probably, I think, one of Stanley Kubrick's best movies. Period.
Do yourself a favor and read, and when you find some, I mean, I know we all read a lot. We probably have at least 1,000 books that we all need to read, but do yourself a favor and read those books. They're really deep. It's really deep.
It's on my list. Greg, historical movies that are cool. Is there any good movies that they have made that you're aware of that tackles historical mysteries?
Ooh.
That's a tough one.
Yeah, that is.
That's a tough one.
That does tackle one. The Terror. It's a television show. I think it's on Showtime, I believe. The first season, it's based on the failed Franklin expedition to the Northwest Passage through the upper parts of Canada, and the whole crew eventually they died from starvation, from the extreme cold, trying to find the remains of that expedition. They found a lot of cairns, and they did find a few of the bodies of those people, but they never found any survivors. The last few were trying to make contact with the Inuit people that lived in that part of Canada. In the show, it's got more of like a supernatural horror element to it, where it delves into Aboriginal mythology.
Wow, that sounds really interesting.
That's the first season. The second season doesn't have to do with the Franklin expedition, but it deals with during World War II, when Japanese Americans were in the internment camps, and this photographer is taking pictures of the folks there, and he would find this shape-shifting creature from Japanese mythology. So I have not seen any of them, but I heard they're very good, and I would definitely check those out.
That sounds pretty cool. There's a movie that someone made years ago now. I think it was like a B movie, but it was about the Diatlov Pass incident. Are y'all familiar with the Diatlov Pass incident?
No. What is that?
I'm slow.
Greg, you're familiar with it?
somewhat familiar. It's some hikers that went missing, but the evidence of the bodies suggests that they were probably attacked or chased by something. But the authorities say it was hypothermia. But
what did you say it was called again, Greg? I'm sorry. I mean, what did you say it was called again, Mark?
It's about. I don't remember the name of the movie. It's about I'll find out. I'll find out. And I'll text it to you or whatever.
Oh, okay.
But this is to go into more detail of what Greg just said. So in the Soviet Union, this is back, I think, in the early 50s, if I'm not mistaken.
Late 50s.
These college kids in the Soviet Union, they're mountaineers, and they go to Siberia. Siberia is a weird place. It's just a weird place. You got Tunguska, you got all that stuff. Either way, so there was I think it was a college professor, I think, and then there's a bunch of students. I might be wrong on the college professor, but I think there was an adult and a bunch of college students, and they wanted to go climb Mount Otorten, which in the local native language it means "do not go there," and that's the name of the mountain. But Mount Otorten, they go to there's a place called Diatlov Pass, and there's a lot of the place has been known for many decades, for centuries actually, for having bizarre and paranormal phenomenon. A lot of UFO activity, possible a Yeti-like creature or a Sasquatch-like creature, lights in the sky, just all kinds of bizarre stuff out there. And these students they're hiking up the mountain, and they get to a certain point on the mountain, and for some reason, instead of they decided to stop and pitch their tents and set up camp right there in that very dangerous part of the mountain, instead of going back down to the forest, which nobody could understand why they did that. But anyway, so they set up camp there, and they never came back. They never came back to their families, reported them missing. The Soviets, long story short, they put together a search party for them, and eventually they found their bodies. They were all dead. Some of them had radiation burns all over them. Some of them looked like a force of some kind hit them without breaking their skin, but completely annihilating the inside of them. Their skeleton, their bones, their tissue, everything. Some of them, one of them, their tongue was removed, and then also where their tents were, the tents were cut open from the inside. So some of them were half naked. I mean, they were in a hurry to get out of that tent for some reason. They were in a big hurry. What happened to them?
Yeah.
But that's the Diatlov Pass incident. We're going to talk about that one day in the future in great detail. We're going to go into that sometime.
And Russia also get into the Tunguska incident as well.
Yeah, we might as well talk about mysterious Siberia. I mean, we can talk about Tunguska. We can talk about the Diatlov Pass incident. I mean, there's those two things alone. That would be a great thing for us to talk about. What do you think?
I think that sounds really intriguing. I've never heard of that before, so that's why I was asking you about what it was. I'll probably once we in this podcast, I'll probably read about it. That sounds horrific. That sounds absolutely horrific. But
yeah,
I agree with you. Siberia is a bizarre place. You hear a lot of stories. I don't know what's true and what isn't, but you hear a lot of stories about Siberia. I guess that's why it was a punishment to get sent there.
Here's the thing. Ancient Aliens season 1, there's an episode called Aliens in Evil Places or something to that effect. They talk about in that episode of Ancient Aliens, they did talk about the Diatlov Pass incident. That'd be where I'd start.
Oh, okay, I'm gonna check that out.
Yeah, definitely check that out, man. But anyway, man, there is a movie that they made about it. I'm not sure what the name of the movie is. I'll see if I can find out. And I'll text it to you later or something. Anyway, moving on. This is going to be a really exciting year, guys. I'm really excited about it, and also, oh yeah. So check this out. I got something for you guys. A little surprise. Um, so recently, I made established contact with the author Ron Felber. Um, Ron Felber is a very, very accomplished writer. He's written he writes fiction and nonfiction. And he wrote a book. He's very well known for several things. First of all, this is very interesting to me. There's a series on TV about the mafia doctor or something like that.
Mhm.
And he wrote the novel that show is based off of. And I think he might be a producer in some degree. I'm not sure about that. But at any rate, he wrote a book, though, called The Mojave Incident. Okay. And Greg, you've read the book. I remember I loaned this book to Greg Vince, and Greg can tell you straight up. He can back me up on this one. But it's the most bizarre and terrifying account of paranormal phenomenon I think I've ever heard. Period. It's a true story about a couple. Their names Steve and Dawn Hess, and they were out in the Mojave Desert, and they had a 8 to 10 hour long encounter with non-human entities and a UFO. And it is absolutely horrifying. I think it's one of the most. It's a very well written book. I thought it was very well written, didn't you, Greg?
Yes, it
Um,
was. It was a very entertaining book.
to say the least. Like the thing is that one of the creepiest parts, and this right here is where things get really interesting with the UFO phenomenon. Um, there's a lot of first for one thing, he points out in the book that there's a lot of religious overtones to the story. Um, and then also they encountered many different types of entities. Some of them were reminiscent of, like, for lack of a better term, a gremlin with red eyes, glowing
Mhm.
red eyes, little gremlin looking things. That's the first ones that they encountered. Then they encountered some kind of translucent looking spirit type entities. And then they had encountered the Greys, and some other kind of entity as well, I believe. But they had, and then they encountered, in the course of this situation, they encountered what they think is an angel.
Mhm.
During the course of this, I mean, Vince. It's a remarkable story, and Ron Felber will be on Project Stargate Fringe Research February the 16th. I'm very pleased to announce that, and it's going to be a one heck of a story, man. I encourage all our listeners to tune into that. It'll be February 16th. Ron Felber will be on Project Stargate, and we're going to have him on, and maybe we can get Greg and Vince to come back and hang out with us that day as well, if they're able to. But at any rate, man, that's going to be an exciting year, man. Very, very excited to have Ron Felber coming up here. We got Niara Isley coming before him. It's just going to be a really, really, really good year for Project Stargate. I'm real excited to see where we go with this science and these new science content we're going to create, and these historical mysteries. It's going to add a lot of listening value to the project, and I think that I'm hoping that during the course of this, though, I hope that our listeners gain from this. I hope they learn something, or maybe become open to more possibilities and new ideas. And that's at the end of the day what it's all about for me.
Greg, I have a question. I guess while we're talking about content, do you ever do research into things like ghost ships, like ships that disappear and then they find them and the crew's gone, and Otherwise everything is normal, but then there's no crew. Do you ever research things like that, like ghost ships, plane disappearances in
It's
history?
funny, though. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for talking over you.
No, that's fine.
Oh, okay. Recently I did not until just recently, because I fell on a podcast and they talked about a few, including the Mary Celeste, which I was gonna tell a story about sometime this year, and those are the most bizarre. And usually it's usually for many different reasons, but my theory is that either they abandoned ship because they think that their ship is in danger if it was hit by a really bad storm, or in some cases, yeah, in some cases, I think that they might have been attacked by an enemy vessel. I don't know, with the Mary Celeste, they thought that they might have been attacked by pirates, even though they had like 1,700 barrels of industrial alcohol, which was never even taken. So who knows? There's a lot of stories about ghost ships, but there's so many different types of theories as to why they would have been abandoned, why no one's on them. So I found those very interesting, very intriguing, and they're definitely worth looking into.
Wow, that's going to be cool. I can't wait to hear more about that, man.
Absolutely.
The ghost ships are really cool, man. That's going to be really interesting. Um, but anyway, guys, I think that about wraps it up for today. Next week on Project Stargate, Near Isley will be with us. Don't miss and for the listeners, you're in for a special treat with this one. This is going to be a very riveting and a little bit controversial story, but we're excited that she's going to be with us. And then on the 16th, Ron Felber will be on Project Stargate as well. So don't hang in there with us and stay with us until then. This is Mark Brenner and signing off. Greg, Vince, thank you for being with me today, and look forward to seeing you guys soon.
Absolutely.
All right.
All right. Thank you, and y'all have a good day.
All right. Have a good night.
All right.